Here we go again. Opposition to Electronic Arts and its games like Sims 4 being sold is now mounting. But will this opposition actually be able to stop everything? Now, in a whirlwind response, two US senators and a prominent video game workers union both submitted letters opposing the pending sale of Electronic Arts. Really quickly though, I want to say pending, and I need to remind you of the details of the sale, because obviously I know we are all saying that it's been bought out, but technically it is still pending, which means there is still time for some intervention. This sale is supposed to close in Q1 of financial year 27, and it is subject to customary closing conditions. Following the close of the transaction, EA's common stock will no longer be listed on the public market. We also know it's going to be funded by a combination of cash by these free investors, which I talked about in a previous video. This includes the receipt of regulatory approvals and approval by EA stockholders. Now, on to the opposition letters. I will read some of the most important parts and provide links in full as always. As always, I do appreciate you watching my videos, but I encourage you to interpret for yourself. Obviously, I am not a legal expert, so I can only summarize and give you my honest impressions. This letter was posted on October 14th. This is addressed to the chair of the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. We write with profound concern about the foreign influence and national security risks posed by the potential acquisition of American video game producer Electronic Arts by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, Silver Lake Group, and Jared Kushner's affinity partners. We urge you and the committee to apply searching scrutiny to this unprecedented proposed foreign privatization of a major American technological company. We request that you provide the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations and Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs with information to ensure that national security risks arising from this acquisition may be mitigated. So to be clear here, they are worried about overall security risks. And then they do reiterate the deal, which we don't need to go into too much detail because we have covered. They talk about the $55 billion acquisition, which would be the largest buyout transaction in history, reportedly resulting in the PIF owning a majority stake, with Silver Lake and affinity partners holding minority shares. And the acquiring firms would have to pay a termination fee of $1 billion to Electronic Arts if the acquisition fails because regulatory approvals cannot be secured, which of course I feel like a lot of us are hoping for. Now, the proposed transaction poses a number of significant foreign influence and national security risks, beginning with the PIF's reputation as a strategic arm of the Saudi government. As Saudi Arabia's sovereign influence fund, the PIF has made dozens of strategic investments in sports, video games, which also includes a $3.3 billion investment in Activision Blizzard, and also cultural influences. Leveraging long-term shifts in public opinion through the PIF's investments, Saudi Arabia is seeking to normalize its global image, expand its cultural reach, and gain leverage in spaces that shape how billions connect and interact. In addition, they also mention the Trump family member, Jared Kushner. His firm previously received $2 billion investments from PIF over the objections of PIF's own investment screening board, and it raises troubling questions about whether Kushner is involved in the transaction solely to ensure the federal government's approval of the transaction. Furthermore, the deal's potential to expand and strengthen Saudi foreign influence in the United States is compounded by the national security risks raised by the Saudi government's access to unchecked influence over sensitive personal information. They talk about the use of artificial intelligence and the company's product design and direction. As they explain, modern video games like social media platforms have the potential to harvest vast amounts of users' personal and behavioral data. With a global user base of at least 700 million that have spent over 13 billion hours playing its games in 2024 alone, EA has insight into its consumers, relationships, and their daily lives. They also worry there could be selective retaliation and censorship of people disfavored by the Saudi government. And finally, to help Congress understand and evaluate the committee's assessment, including the extent of stronger laws governing this, please provide a staff briefing and detailed information by November 4th. Interestingly enough, this union did post this on October 15th, so following the senators. The recent proposed acquisition of Electronic Arts by the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia and private equity firms, including Jared Kushner's affinity partners, will further concentrate power and wealth into the hands of a few gatekeepers while doing nothing to address the concerns of players and workers. EA is not a struggling company, with annual revenues reaching $7.5 billion and $1 billion in profit every year. EA is one of the largest video game developers and publishers in the entire world. EA's success has been driven by tens of thousands of EA workers whose creativity, skill, and innovation has made EA worth buying in the first place. However, the very people who will be jeopardized as a result of this deal were not represented at all when this was negotiated, which is something I do think it is important to say, because I guarantee you the Sims team had no say in this whatsoever. As they continue, we are worried about the future of our studios that are deemed less profitable, but also whose contributions to the video game industry defines the reputation. Since 2022, an estimated 40,000 video game workers have already lost their job due to massive layoffs. As reported in Game Developer, this deal will result in EA having to finance nearly $20 billion in debt. Who will be spared, which corners will executives cut, and what studios will be sacrificed in order for that to happen. Every time private equity or billionaire investors take a studio private, workers lose visibility, transparency, and power. Decisions that shape our jobs, our art, our future are all made behind closed doors by executives who have never written a line of code. We are calling on regulators and elected officials to scrutinize this deal and ensure that any path forward protects jobs, preserves creative freedom, and keeps decision-making accountable. However, we also recognize that regulators and elected officials alone will not save the video game industry. Only we can truly do that. Organizing is the only thing that guarantees workers a real voice when ownership changed hands. So yeah, that is pretty strongly worded, and I pretty much agree with everything they said. Both of these letters combined are really compelling. The question is this actually going to make a difference? Well, number one, even if it doesn't, it's still important to raise these concerns. But there actually is a petition going around. I will share it in a link, but it is worth signing it just for the heck of it. I will say though, it doesn't have to be just Sims players, it should be more players, and it needs to be people within the government, which honestly that is such a hot topic right now. Calling senators or writing to senators if you are located in the United States is one option as well. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where there probably isn't going to be much scrutiny over this, but that doesn't mean you have to just give up. So if you do want to, you can sign that petition, or like I said, write to a senator or call a senator. Now, as far as is this actually still going to go through, personally, I think it's still very likely, but again, I am not a legal expert. Honestly, one bad sign is Wall Street is very excited about this deal, and in addition, even though this deal is considered a risk financially, there are some people that are going to benefit no matter what happens. And what do I mean by that? Well, when we look into the deeper details, there are some pretty interesting terms. Because in return for the $2 billion investment, PIF receives at least a 28% stake in Kushner's main investment vehicle. On a $2 billion investment, Saudi Arabia pays Affinity Partners $25 million annually in asset management fees. Now here's the kicker. The structure provides Kushner with guaranteed income regardless of investment performance. That's right, with this structure, Kushner will come out on top no matter what. Since 2021, Affinity Partners has collected at least $112 million in fees from Saudi Arabia. And following a 2024 Senate investigation into Affinity Partners, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon concluded that Affinity Partners may not be motivated by commercial considerations, but rather the opportunity for foreign governments to pay members of the Trump family. Now, I think I'm going to end right there because there's a lot more to dig into, and trust me, this saga is far from over. I do have a lot more things I've been looking into, but it's just gonna take some time, and I always want to do my due diligence. I don't want to be reactionary, but I also don't want to just not say anything at all. So all that aside, do sign the petition if you feel like it, can't hurt anything. As always, thanks so much for watching. I know this was not a visually interesting video, but I did think it was important to actually see the text on screen. As always, I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you in the next video.